I want to welcome on my next guest. We have a very special guest. We've got college football Hall of Famer, New Orleans Saints legend, and patriarch of the first family of football, Mr. Archie Manning. Archie, how's everything going for you?
Real good, Zach. Glad to be with you today.
Awesome. How's everything going for you? I know we're still in the mix of this pandemic. How's everything been? You guys I feel we're getting to the finish line. How's everything been going for your family?
Well, everything's fine. The world has slowed down a good bit with the pandemic. I usually travel a decent amount. I've been sticking pretty close to home here in New Orleans, but we've been fortunate. We're healthy, and all our family and our kids, grandkids, everyone's healthy. So we're doing real good. Thank you.
Glad to hear. Well, of course, what was Mardi Gras like this year? Was it a little different?
Yeah, it was very different. There was no Mardi Gras, and so people came to town. The weather was kind of decent. People came to town, but of course, no parades. I guess the one thing, a lot of people throughout neighborhoods fixed up their homes like Mardi Gras floats. So it was kind of like walking tours, people just going around and visiting those homes, but certainly without all the parades and the thousands and thousands of people, especially young people, college students didn't come to town. It was far different.
Yeah, well, hopefully next year we can sort of get things right back on track. This past year, in my opinion, we just moved past it. Doesn't count. We keep on going. We're figuring out 2021, 2022. 2022 is going to be the best years of this decade, so we're getting ready for it. So I want to ask some of your thoughts on these past football season, because I know right now both of your sons have retired from the National Football League, and the quarterback who played for the team you spent the bulk of your career with, Drew Brees, also retired. So my question for you is, who are you looking forward to watching next season?
Well, this past year was really different, Zach, not having one playing for the first time in 20-something seasons. But it was fine. We had always first the Colts, and then the Colts and the Giants, then the Broncos and the Giants, and then finally just the Giants every Sunday. So this past year, I guess we weren't as anxious, or we didn't have the anticipation each week. Of course, we live here in New Orleans. We've always followed the Saints, and I kept up with the Saints probably closer than I had in the past.
Who do you think should be the day one starter next season, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill?
Well, I would just speculate. I would guess it'll be Jameis Winston. And one reason for that, I think this coaching staff has had a year with Jameis where he didn't play, but he was in the room. He was in the quarterback room. He was on the practice field. He played a little bit. So I think they feel like they know what kind of player he can be. I think they feel like that, and I'm just assuming this, no one has told me that he can be their quarterback and starting quarterback. They got to look at Taysom last year in in 4 games when Drew got hurt again. And I think that was good. It wasn't good that Drew was hurt, but it was good that they got to see Taysom solely at the quarterback position for 4 games. And I thought he did great. I thought he did just fine. But I believe they really want to keep Taysom where they have him, where they've had him the last few years. Multiple positions, using him multiple ways, special teams, offense, receiver, tight end. I just said he's such a weapon, and he's such a tough guy, and just a heck of a football player. So I think in an ideal situation, Jameis would play the quarterback position, play it at a high level, and Taysom would keep doing all the multiple things he does to help their offense.
Yeah. So actually, I was looking at it. So this coming draft is going to be the 50th draft since you, Jim Plunkett, and Dan Pastorini were selected 1, 2, and 3. And it's widely expected that the Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets, and the San Francisco 49ers will all take quarterbacks in the top 3. And I want to get your take on this year's draft class of quarterbacks.
Well, it's certainly, I think, a talented group. When that happened 50 years ago, and that does make me feel old. First in New England, I was second to New Orleans, and my good buddy Dan, and Jim's a good friend of mine. My good buddy Dan Pastorini was third. That was the first time that had ever happened. And then I remember a real strong quarterback draft year. Zach, you might help me. I want to say it was I think it might have been 83. Would that have been John Elway? Of course, Dan Marino lasted till later on in that first round, but it was Ken O'Brien was in that draft. Todd Blackledge. It was a bunch, maybe about 6 in the first round. So this year kind of reminds me of that, although it looks like those quarterbacks back then, if it was 83, were spread out throughout the first round. It looks like this bunch are going to be top 10 guys and maybe a couple more later. It's some talented guys there. I know everybody right now is really just checking the film. I know the pro days just there's just so much. The Jets moved Sam Darnold, so it looks they got to get a quarterback. So a lot of speculation on them taking Wilson. I don't think there's any doubt Trevor's going to go first to Jacksonville. And then the real interesting deal was the 49ers trading up to the 3rd pick. That's got people really guessing. I think a year that was full of good quarterback play, but obviously, Zach, the biggest surprise had to be Mac Jones and the level in which he played at Alabama. Now, I know he's got great teammates and great coaches, but still, when you throw complete 77% of your passes and go up and down the field and, 400 yards almost every game, it was really impressive. And I think his character and everything about him has impressed NFL people this offseason. So it's going to be interesting. And then you never know who else may jump up there and trade up. And of course, Denver's kind of an interesting situation. Do they want to get into this thing? The Deshaun Watson deal makes it kind of interesting. So it'll be a lot of anticipation for this draft.
Have all of the top prospects been to the Manning Passing Academy, or just a few of them?
We didn't have it last year. Mac Jones was scheduled to be here. Wilson didn't come. Trevor came two years ago. Great kid, great looking kid, super. Let's see, who else is in? Justin Fields was set to come this past year. We were really disappointed we didn't get to see him. So missing a year. Usually we sometimes we get kids for 2 years. There's been cases where we've had them 3. Marcus Mariota, I remember, came 3 years in a row. We've lined up our quarterbacks this year to come, and I looked at them out of about the 40 that we've invited. We've got about 5 or 6 that have been before.
Cool.
So most of them are new because we didn't get to invite anyone last year.
What's the age requirement? Because I'm still trying to work on my perfect spiral. Is there an age requirement to come into the academy to maybe improve my?
We start taking campers. We take some 8th grade campers, mostly 9th and 10th graders, the juniors and seniors. We have about 1,200 kids, but probably the biggest group are the 9th and 10th graders. 1,200 kids. Oh, Zach, it'd be ideal to have 600 quarterbacks, 600 receivers. We have probably 900 quarterbacks and 300. My son Cooper says it's really a better wide receiver camp because they get so much work because they're outnumbered by the quarterbacks. But we bring in 40 college quarterbacks that they're counselors, they're coaches. And it's not necessarily the 40 best in the country. We like to, I talk to pro scouts. We try to get the top maybe 10 or 12, but then we spread it out. We get kids from small school. We've got a quarterback coming from Wabash College. We've got a quarterback coming from Delta State. We kind of take care of the locals, the Tulane, Nicholls State. We'll have Louisiana Lafayette. We'll have Troy, probably Troy. We'll have maybe UAB, Southern Miss. So it comes kind of a regional thing too.
Have you guys, I know you've been doing it for years. Has there been kind of 1 or 2 guys maybe that stuck out that prior to the camp you had never heard of, and then after that, like, you can't stop hearing about them?
It's our 25th year. So now we didn't always have 40. We started, I think the first year we had 2 quarterbacks, Pete Manning and Jake DeLome. So we've added counselors through the years. Yeah, we've had, I'm not sure when Josh Allen came here from Wyoming. I'm not sure a lot of people knew who Josh Allen was, what he had done at Wyoming, and how talented he was. I can remember that particular year they were doing a competition one day, the college quarterbacks, and it started raining. And we didn't get them off the field because it wasn't lightning, so we let them go. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone throw a wet football like Josh Allen threw that day. He's truly a great young man, and I can't say I'm somewhat surprised how well he's played because he's played well so quick. But he's a great player and a great young man.
I was watching some recent interview with him. Apparently, he couldn't get any offers coming out of high school. He grew up like on a cantaloupe farm, and now he's potentially going to make some real money. And the Bills are a real contender. So I want to ask about your college career a little bit. What sold you on Ole Miss? Why Ole Miss?
Why? I'm sorry.
Ole Miss. I saw a couple schools recruited you, but you always wanted to be a Rebel.
Oh, I grew up about 80 miles from Oxford, Mississippi. During my childhood, Ole Miss had great teams. We had a Hall of Fame coach there named Johnny Vaught, and he always had really good quarterbacks through the years. Not necessarily guys that went on to play pro ball, but good college quarterbacks and living that close. And that's who I followed. I was just a fan. I didn't get heavily recruited, but one of my offers was from Ole Miss, and that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go play for Coach Vaught, and I wanted to play for the Ole Miss Rebels.
So I had Wesley Walls on a couple months ago, and he told me that out of the blue one day when he was in high school working at a store stocking blue jeans, he got a call from Archie Manning that convinced him to become a Rebel. Do you remember that, kind of how that came together?
Wesley, a little bit like me. He even grew up closer to Oxford than I did in a wonderful little community called Pontotoc, Mississippi.
That's it.
And I'd been to their football camp up there and met Wesley. And he was a good player. He was a two-way player back then. He played tight end, played linebacker. But his senior year, he had to play some quarterback. And he had committed to Ole Miss. All of a sudden, I think Ray Perkins was coaching at Alabama, that Alabama called Wesley and said, well, you might can play some quarterback. You're really doing pretty good. You might can play some quarterback. And it kind of got him mixed up. And Ole Miss coaches called me. Back then, you could do this. I could call Wesley. Now, you can't do that. You can't call a prospect. But anyway, I called Wesley. I said, Wesley, what's up? Well, I don't know. I said, Wesley, you can't play quarterback at Alabama, okay? He said, I know it. I'm going to Ole Miss. And Wesley's one of the best players we ever had at Ole Miss.
What do you think of the job Lane Kiffin's doing there now?
Last year, boy, they were really very productive offensively up and down the field. Didn't stop people too well and probably didn't have enough SEC caliber players on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully through recruiting, the portal, some junior college, that they've strengthened the defense. I think they'll be really good on offense. We have a really good little quarterback named Matt Corral, and he was really impressive throughout the year last year with big games, long yard. He had a couple of hiccups like maybe I did a few times where he got a little colorblind in a game or two and wasn't sure what color the jersey you're throwing to, but it happens with all us quarterbacks.
So I want to talk about so obviously get drafted by the Saints, number 2 in 71. What was that process like? Because I know that wasn't like an April draft, and it wasn't in New York. They just did it in January. What was that like?
Wasn't much to it, Zach. It was January, so it was really just 3 weeks after I'd played my last college game. So there was no one-on-ones with scouts or coaches or anything like they do. No combine, no pro days, no workouts. They just watched film and drafted. And they didn't invite people to New York. It wasn't a big deal. I'm not even sure it was on TV. I don't think it was on TV. So I just simply, I didn't even know the draft was coming up the next day. I just got married and we'd gotten back to start our second semester of school. And the sports information department at Ole Miss called me and said, listen, NFL drafts tomorrow. I said, oh, yeah, I got that. He said, well, I think one of these teams, either New England or New Orleans or Houston, is going to draft you in the first 3 picks. So you need to come over here. So I went over there. Classes were starting that day. But I went over at 9 o'clock. The draft was starting. At 9:15, the Saints called and said they'd drafted me. So I talked to them on the phone a few minutes, and they came in, took a picture, and I went to my 10 o'clock class. So that was my draft day 50 years ago. A far cry from what my boys went through when they were in New York for the draft, or what these young people go through today.
So I've actually had another member of your draft class I had Kenny Anderson on a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. I don't know if you had him on Zoom. He got a cool I forget what some beer. What was it? Kenny Keystones with Kenny.
I was on a Zoom with Kenny
Okay.
a few months ago from Hilton, I think from Hilton Head. And Kenny, of course, my age, longtime friend, great player, played for Paul Brown and the Bengals. Gosh, he's so accurate, and just outstanding. One of my good friends.
So I want to ask you. So you're after your rookie season, 72. You guys had a top pick, and John Hannah was available. Another prior guest of the show. You guys didn't take him. Did you maybe say, hey, maybe this guy from Alabama is pretty good. Maybe we should consider him?
Yeah, well, he was certainly a great player, one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time. And we could have used him here. I'm not degrading the offensive lineman I had. We just had a lot of them and a lot of people passing through here. And we changed coaches a lot. We changed players a lot. We changed offensive lines a lot. But I think John Hannah could have fit in real good here.
Now, there's a couple more questions for you. Did some research about an hour ago. Saw something I've never heard before. So apparently, one of your former GMs was an astronaut. What was that like?
Well, his name was Dick Gordon, and he was an astronaut. And he just he lived over in Houston, where astronauts lived in those days. And our owner was from Houston, John Meekum, and they were best friends. And so we were making a change in the front office, and John just thought maybe Dick would be a good general manager. I'm sure he was a good astronaut. He's a nice guy. I'm sure he was really a good astronaut.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. How did you stick through all those years, the down years when you guys weren't winning games without saying, you know what, maybe I need to go to a different team? How did you do it?
Well, you never get used to losing, and you always think, something. We changed coaches a lot, and you always think, well, this time this is going to be the right combination. We're going to make it work here. And I think when you go through the lean years and the tough times somewhere, you'd like to be there when the good times come. And I kept trying to have a sanguine feeling about that and start over, and you're going to get some. You got a new head coach, so obviously you got new assistant coaches. They bring in some new players, a lot of times a new offense. This is going to be it, but it just it never worked. It finally did for the Saints, but it was long after I was gone.
Interesting. If free agency had been an option, because it wasn't when because I'm pretty sure it came in '93, would you have considered leaving or trying to leverage them into bringing a better team around?
People advised me, say, you got to move, you got to get it out of there. But really, my deal was. That kind of started here. I liked playing in New Orleans. I'm from Mississippi, not that far from home. I wanted to do it here. I wanted to be part of this when the Saints turned it around. We just never really had the right chemistry to make that happen. It was harder in those days. You mentioned free agency. There wasn't free agency. There wasn't a salary cap. I think it was harder back then, Zach, to build a program. Now, once you ever got there, you could stay for several years. The great teams back then were the Cowboys and the Dolphins, and they were good year after year after year. But it was other teams, like us. Oh gosh, back in those times, Chargers were kind of like that. The Falcons were in our division. They struggled a bit. It was hard to build. It really was, to put it without free agent. You had to do it through the draft or make some really smart trades.
Interesting. So I have a couple last questions for you. Did you spend much time with Pete Maravich?
I used to spend some time with Pete. I was a big fan. The Jazz came here, and Pete was their star player. Pete wanted to lift weights, and they didn't really have a program yet. So he came out to the Saints camp and got on a little weight program, and then he'd want to go catch a football. And Pete was one of the greatest athletes I ever saw. What he could do with a basketball was phenomenal. But Zach, he couldn't throw a football. He couldn't spiral a football. And it frustrated him so much because he could do anything with a basketball. But he was a great, great player. Sometimes I forget that this generation didn't see Pete Maravich. And I'm a basketball fan, and I recognize the greatness, the athleticism, the jumping ability, all the thing of these great players that are like in the NBA or in college today. But Pete Maravich was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. Yeah. What he could do with basketball.
pretty sure 40 points a game with no threes, and he's the all-time leading scorer in 3 years. So people don't talk about that. So it's unbelievable. Two last questions for you. What's your favorite restaurant to go to in New Orleans?
Oh, well, that would have to be Manning's. We have some great restaurants. We have a sports themed restaurant here, and we're doing good. But we have so many great restaurants. And other than that one, I can't start. I mean, they've been nice to me through the years. I like to go there. I like to get good service. So I'll just say, anybody, if you're going to come to New Orleans, kind of work out a little bit before you come, because you're going to eat a lot and put on a few pounds.
And then my last question for you, got to ask, so your grandson Arch getting all these headlines, great prospect, going to be in the league in a couple of years. Hopefully Tom Brady's gone by then. You said he's further than where Peyton and Eli were at that age. What do you see from his game? What do you see that excites you?
I really said that when he was a freshman. The only reason I say that because he played as a freshman. He won the job, got to play, had a productive year. Peyton and Eli really didn't play until their sophomore year. So this past year, sophomore year, probably some similarities. They were productive. They threw the ball. Now, I think most high schools the offenses are different. They're throwing the ball more than they used to back in Peyton's day and Eli's day. But it's a lot of similarities there. And Arch, he's getting a lot of attention, but I'm really proud of the way he's handling that. He doesn't have a Twitter account. He's not all over social media. He's going to school, working out, playing football, and having fun.
It's awesome. He's class of 2023, so a couple more years, we'll see where he ends up.
He's the class of 23.
Awesome. And then my last question for you is the Manning Family Foundation. Can you talk about that, kind of how it started up and kind of how people can check it out and what some of the great work you guys are doing?
Well, primarily, the Payback Foundation is Peyton's. Eli kind of has a separate thing. And then the other things we do primarily is through the Manning Passing Academy, funds we generate each year and try to help primarily local charities and philanthropic needs.
Awesome. Well, that's really all the questions I really have for you. I know you got a busy schedule, but this has been an absolute honor. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat for a few minutes today.
Well, thank you, Zach. It's my pleasure. Glad to be with you, and have a great day.